for joining us this morning. This is Eamon. We'll let Coach start us off here if you want to throw your names in the queue, and we'll get started in our usual format.
Good morning, everybody. This is it's been a while since I talked to all of you last, and I know this is it was a little different last time that I had talked, so I'm going to be on my P's and Q's here. But anyway, I would say that a lot's transpired just in the last month, particularly as it pertains to the coaching staff, and then what Brad's done as well on his end with the additions that we've made. I would say I'll let Brad speak for himself, but I feel like we feel pretty good about where we're at. We feel like we're right on track with where we need to be. I know from my perspective, I feel like we've added the right men to help coach these guys. I feel like these are men that are convicted in what they believe. They know how to coach. They know how to communicate with these players. They're obviously good human beings, and they're in the mold of what Sheila was looking for. And the other thing I would say is that we said all along that we wanted this to be collaborative. We wanted a team effort starting at the top, because when you do that, then it'll bleed down in the locker room, and it's been all of that and then some. So with that, I would lead now into any questions you guys have.
All right, Mike, start us off.
Yeah, hey, Dan, I've got a couple for you. First, I want to hit a little bit on the whole collaboration thing. I still don't think that there's really a clear understanding of who will be the final decision maker. Like, because free agency is coming up, you're deciding on.
Lost him.
Looks like Mike's frozen here.
Mike, I'm sorry. I'm going to grab a coffee here while you're frozen.
We'll come back to Mike. Go ahead, Tim.
I think I know where he was going, but keep.
Hey, Dan, thanks for taking the time. You kind of mentioned it off the top, but when in your press conference, your first press conference, you said you didn't want yes men, right? You wanted guys that all had an opinion, that it was a group effort in that room. Can you just speak to the last 3 weeks and how that's kind of developed a little bit, and how that's going to be successful for you guys in the long run? Everybody having their own opinion and an equal opinion.
Well, I think it's important, because that's how you come to the best decision for the team, for the Detroit Lions. Debate is good. It's a good thing. And now I think that the people that have been added here, these gentlemen that Brad and I both had made additions to the line organization has been. They're all guys that see things the way we see them. Doesn't mean they're like us, but it means they see things very much the same. And they're team guys, man. And they're all about, like for me, when things don't go well, I want to know what I can do. Like I would want to put it on my shoulders. And these guys that I've added are all the same way. It's like, what can I do? What do I need to do? I'm not looking for somebody else to blame, or it's his fault. It's his. So all of these men that are here right now, I really feel good about that. I don't feel like these are guys that are CYA guys. These are guys that are like, man, let's get in the foxhole and let's go to work. How do we improve this thing? And so, so with that, knowing that that's the type of men there are, then man, I want this debate, man. Give me your opinion on it. And look, they'll be the first ones to tell you, look, you're asking me, I don't like this. I don't like the way we're doing it. We should do it this way if you're asking, in my opinion. But yet, Coach, if this is the consensus and this is the road we're going down, I'm going right down that road with you, 100 miles an hour. And my team, my players will fall right in line with that. And that's all you can ask for, because I want to take the input. I want to listen. If somebody's got a better idea or their viewpoint, they really have a conviction about it, and they can change our minds, or they can make us see what they see, man, I'm all for it. Debate is good. That's how you get the best conclusion to the answer.
Go to Dave next.
Hey, Dan, I know you said you're a coffee drinker, so what is that, 1, 6, how many cups are
No,
right
actually, this is my first one. I'm pretty good right now.
You said a gallon a day, so
well, I'll start with water, though. I make sure I load up with water on the way in, then I start my coffee, so.
Right. Just since we're sort of on the brink of free agency here, what do you see as your 1 or 2 top priorities over the the next 7 weeks or whatever it is, like the roster building phase that we're about to enter.
You mean the actual positions, if you will, or?
Yeah, I mean, just in your eyes, like what are the most important things, I guess, that you can do in the next couple of weeks to build this roster, either where you have to address or the type of player you have to add, what you have to do, I
yeah,
guess.
it's a good question. And I think there's a couple of ways I'd go with that. Now, I'll say this first off, I don't want to get too deep into this because I would rather Brad go more into that. But I would say this on my standpoint or my viewpoint is, look, we understand kind of where we're at with this. Look, you can go through the roster and it's no secret that receiver is somewhat of a need. I mean, cornerback, we don't have a lot of depth, and you're always looking for competition in areas, your linebackers, your inside D line, we need O-line depth, right? So there's all kinds of holes that we have here. But no different than any other team. I mean, it's funny because Brad and I were talking about this the other day. As good as where they've been at the Rams and where we were at New Orleans, you're always talking about your holes, You've got your own warts, and it's like, man, as good as you are, you still have these blind spots that you're trying to find a way to, how do we cover this and how do we help ourselves here? So we look, I would say this, man, for me, I sure don't want Brad feeling like he's got to chase positions in the draft. I want him to be able to say, man, this is the guy. These are our guys that we love, and let's feel like this is a outstanding player that we all love, and let's not feel like we have to. Well, we don't really love this guy, but man, we need a linebacker. We don't really love this guy, but we sure do need an inside defensive lineman. I mean, So to your point a little bit, we'll find a way to address some of these spots. And if it's got to be, it's got to be some of these free agents that maybe aren't quite as talented, but man, they are gritty, salty guys that know how to compete and they'll hold their own in there. Then we'll find those guys. That's who will help us in the meantime.
If I could just one quick follow just on that exact topic. I mean, because you're still in the early stages of, I guess, establishing what you want here, the locker room, the type of player, that sort of thing. How much do you expect familiarity to factor into any moves you make? Trusting the guy, knowing the guy that you're bringing in can help establish what you want on and off the field.
Well, look, if I'm being completely transparent with you, I think that's a pretty, I think that's a pretty accurate assessment, or something I would say would be pretty much in line. But that doesn't mean that we're going to have all players from New Orleans here. Now, does that mean that if there's some players from New Orleans? Yeah, because I know who they are. And Brad and I talk about this all the time. It's not even so much what you think they can do. It's, what their downside is. That's different than anything else. When free agency, you don't always know what all the warts are. You do when you've been with these guys. And sometimes you're harder on your own guys when you're around them longer. But I've said this before, and the staff knows this. Man, Brad's been at the Rams. So is Ray Agnew, right? Deuce has been at Philly. Mark DeLeon's been at Chicago. I mean, so yes, but that doesn't mean that they're all going to be from one team. I mean, and so if there's some guys out there that are from other teams that we have history with, this coaching staff has history with, our, personnel department, our GM, our assistant GM has history with, that we know and we trust, and our type of guys. Yeah, I would say that would be pretty intriguing.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
John?
Hey, Dan, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, having played the position, I'm curious your thoughts about the tight end position, how offenses have evolved using tight ends now here as we approach the season, and especially now, too, there's a tight end even potentially being considered a wide receiver that could go in the top 10 in this year's draft.
Yeah, well, look, the position has definitely changed throughout the years. I mean, when I played, I remember when I first came in, it was the workout. About an hour in, you might get to some ball drills. It was, you line up your stance and you're hitting bags and you're hitting sleds and they're running you through, and then you're going to find out if you're going to quit or not. And it's totally different. Now you're looking at the athlete. You want to see, can this guy run, man? How does he move? How's his, how's his reaction time? What are his, just working ball drills, hand mechanics, all those things. So it's definitely changed. And to me, it's not even, I don't even want to use the word, it is tight end, but yet, man, I call it big skill. It's a big skill position. And so most of the time tight ends fall into that, but just because you're a big skill that's played tight end somewhere doesn't mean that you're going to be a traditional tight end. I mean, if you look at what we did with Jared Cook last year, he really didn't have his hand in the ground very much at all. He was used more as a slot, and then we'd split him out and give him isolated, see if they play man-to-man. But so when you have a guy like that, or you have weapons like that, then you can, these guys can be used a little bit more like receivers, if you will, but yet knowing that there's going to be those times where they're still going to need to be able to block and help you in the run game. But so it's definitely changed. But I think big skill is hard to find, if I'm being honest with you. And I think it's a hard matchup for defenses. And, when you have a guy that you feel like can win his one-on-ones, I don't care what he plays, those guys are intriguing, man. When you have guys on your roster that the defense is like spending extra time on all week, that's who they're worried about. I mean, those guys that's kind of the type of guys you're looking for.
Appreciate it, Dan. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Go to Kyle.
Morning, Dan.
Hey, good morning.
You mentioned cornerback as one of your top needs going into free agency. I'm curious to hear your evaluation of Desmond Trufant and Justin Coleman. And have you guys made a determination yet on whether they'll be back next year?
Well, I hate that I'm going to have to do this to you, because I know look, we've been talking, Brad and I have talked about all that, and I would say there's going to be some things that go down this week one way or another. And so when all that happens, you'll know, but I don't want to get too deep into all that. I know both of those players. And I mean, Trufant, he was in a division for years at New Orleans, so I know him well. But, I just know overall we need competition in that area. And so we need depth in areas, we need competition. I mean, just because, for example, we got two young cornerbacks, man, you still want competition. You want guys that they're having to compete and that are able to push them, or they're pushing for that starting position. I mean, it's healthy. It makes you better.
All right, we're going to go 3 more. Justin, Larry, then Mike.
Morning, Dan.
Morning.
I'm curious on Deuce's role. I know every team kind of views that assistant head coach position different. How do you view what he's going to bring to the staff beyond the position coach aspect of it?
I told Deuce that when I was on the phone with him, when I thought that he was about to get out of Philly or he was thinking about it, I told him, I said, look, you're not going to be a token assistant head coach. I'm going to use him, and I plan on using him for some media obligations. I plan on him being part of we had him in during our player evaluations on the whole offense and defense, though he wasn't able to be in there very long because he had to go back with A-Lin and work offensively. But I'm going to keep him abreast of the cap and things of that nature, what we're trying to do with free agency. Guys that I know, even if they're on defense, I want him to have a hand in. I've already told him I want him to look over the fine schedule and us sit down together. I mean, so I'm going to use this guy. I mean, he's going to be primed and ready to be a head coach when it's all said and done. Like, all his bases are going to be covered. He's going to be able to check off every box and say, all right, I've been there, I've done that. I know I've been trained for this, just like Sean did for me. He's going to be a true assistant head coach. And if something goes down and he needs to step in into my seat, he's ready to roll. And so that's how I view it. I got a lot of respect for Deuce, and I think he's a hell of a man. I think he's a hell of a coach, and I really do. I believe he's going to be a head coach in this league sooner than later. So now, for me, hopefully later than sooner, but I know it's going to happen.
And I know you're talking to us right now in lieu of combine access. There is no combine this year. A lot of the college football seasons were shortened. Some were even canceled. Just how difficult has it been in these early, I guess, evaluation meetings of college prospects compared to maybe years past?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly it's a little bit tricky. And there again, Brad can speak more on that than I can. I mean, I've looked at some of those guys with Brad, but I would, if I'm being honest with you, he's been able to dive into that a lot more than I have to this point. But certainly it's there is a little bit of a leap of faith, you know, and you're having to, some of these guys, you got to go off old film, and, or then these guys, man, you know, it looked pretty good, but they only played 5 games or 4 games. And so, it is a little bit tricky, but listen, those are the hands, that's the hand we're dealt, right? Those are the cards that we're given. And so we're going to make the most of it one way or another. And whoever we bring in here, here's the beauty of this, man. Brad and I have talked about this. Whoever we bring in here, like when it comes to, you're talking about the draft or even free agency, it needs to be somebody we love, you know, and somebody that, man, we all feel like there's almost a unanimous decision that we love this guy. This guy can help us. We know who this guy is, and we know what he's about. We know what his fit is. We know what his role is, because that's just as important. What is the fit? And if this guy, he could be one of the greatest players you've ever seen, but if he doesn't fit us, we don't know what to do with him. We don't know where to put him. It does us no good. And so, you know, look, that's where we're at right now. Those are the rules, and so we'll make a go of it.
Thank you, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Larry?
Good morning, Dan. I was wondering if you can share your general thoughts on free agency. I think most teams, you know, want to draft and develop guys as their core, but how do you see free agency this year in particular and big picture playing into what you hope to do?
Yeah, I think that anybody that we bring in right now is going to need to be able to set a tone for us here. I would say this, if you look at just what is here now, when we walked in the door, it really is, it's a good group of guys. It's not like we have some bad guys, anything like that. It's a good group of guys. So, you know, as far as, well, you know, we got to get some bad guys out of here and you got to bring some, it's nothing like that. It's really not. I mean, everything that, you know, has been real positive in that regard. That's a plus. Most of the time you come in a place and it's not that way, but so that's a positive here. But I think that, look, certainly you're looking to guys to bring in that either can compete to start, even if it's for a year, or they're going to push the guy that's behind them and make them have to earn that spot. They're a young player and make them have to earn that spot and get better and work on their craft. And so I just think that, you know, philosophy-wise, those are the type of guys that we want to add. I mean, certainly, and wherever that is, if it makes sense that, hey, this is the position that we do it at, it's receiver, then we get a receiver. If it's, you know, tight end, it's tight end. If it's running back, then it's running back. Somebody that can complement Swift, somebody that helps push him. But that doesn't mean that it's over. It doesn't mean that we're not drafting somebody as well. So we're going to have a lot of flexibility in what we do here. We're not going to be in this mad rush or panic to, you know, get into the game with everybody else. We'll find a way to make this work. And, you know, there again, it might always be pretty, but we'll find guys that know how to compete and that can hold their own for a little bit here, you know, one way or another while we get up on our feet.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back to Mike for last question.
Sorry about that, Dan. My computer apparently needed some coffee.
It's all good. All good.
So I got 2 questions for you. First, you mentioned near unanimous decision there before. So what happens when it isn't a unanimous decision? What happens when you and Brad are maybe in a disagreement on a player? Who has that final decision, whether it's free agency or draft?
Good
I don't think
question.
that's been clear.
Yeah, Brad and I do.
Okay, so but again, what happens if you don't agree?
Well, here's what I would say. I kind of brought this up at this is weeks ago, but here's what I'd say about a true alpha. A true alpha knows when it's time to concede for the betterment of the team. And so I would tell you one way or another, there's already been a couple of things where it's like, maybe we don't, you see it a little more this way, I see it a little, we haven't had one problem, and we're not going to have a problem. Because if we feel like it's the betterment for the team, and ultimately, let's go to what does Brad feels one way, what does the pack feel like? How does everybody feel? How do all the coaches feel? How does Ray Agnew feel? And if I'm the odd man out, I got zero problem being like. And so, listen, I'm just telling you, I know where you're going with it. It won't be a problem. I know it won't. And we will come to the best agreement. And I'm not going to wallow in my own pride and worry about, you know, but I really want this guy, and I can't believe that he doesn't see it my way. And I mean, one of the reasons that I feel like I'm here is because, man, believe it or not, I'm a good listener too, and I can hear all sides. And there's been things that people have been able to change my mind because I'm able to look at it and I'm able to see it and I can digest it. And it may take a day, but you come back and you know what? I see what you see. I get it. I understand where you're going with it. And so, so to answer your question, Brad and I have the final say on these things, and we'll be just fine. We'll be just fine. We'll get this thing worked out one way or another.
And lastly, this may have gotten asked in the time that I was, rebooting here, but you guys have a decision on Kenny Golladay when it comes to a franchise tag or keep him or not. What is the franchise's stance right now with Kenny Golladay?
Well, I would love to be franchised. That would be nice because it's a pretty good little chunk right now. But I don't want to get that far into it. I really don't, Michael. I'm sorry. Look, all these things will be coming down the road, before the 17th, obviously. And look, we've had dialogue. We've talked back and forth. Brad and I have talked about this. I mean, we've gone every scenario you could go down, believe it or not, just on everybody. And how does this move here affect this move? And so I don't want to go that far into that. Let me say this, because I thought this is where you were heading. I hate to change the subject, Michael,
Sure.
but because this is in regards to Sheila, because I know there'd been something put out there. And let me say this. I want you just to imagine that your boss tells you, hey, listen, I would love for us to be a team here at the top. Like a legit team, like when you were in freaking high school type team where we're all in the same boat, we're all going the same direction, we all believe the same things, all right? And yet at the end of the day, though, because I know who I am as your boss, I'm going to give you every resource to do your job, and it's your decision. But yet just let me know what's going on. Do you mind if I'm involved in just listening? Be like, no, not one bit. Not one bit. And actually, it's strongly encouraged. She has been outstanding, all right? And yes, she's been in personnel meetings. She's not in there, what she's been in the room. She's on the Zoom. And we've asked her input because, I mean, she's the owner. I want her input. I'd love to know what she says. But every time it's like, listen, I'm not making this decision. I want you guys to, what you feel is best. That's why I hired you guys, for what is the best for the Lions organization. And so she's been nothing but outstanding. But I want all of our coaches, I want our personnel department, I want our players to know, man, she cares. Like, she wants to be around. She wants to be part of this. Because when you have an owner that wants to be involved in that, but yet she's just like Sheila is, where, listen, you guys do what you need to do. I'm here. I'm a resource. But yet she's hearing all the information. She's finding out all the things about these players that we all know. I mean, you can't ask for anything better. And so she's been outstanding. That's the truth. And I wanted to make sure I got that across.
Thanks, Stan. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to reset with Brad here. Give us a minute.
Y'all have a good one.
Guys, morning. Good to see everybody. Good to see everybody again. Obviously in a different stage of where we're at with the process, but it's been very, very enjoyable. The process up to this point. I couldn't have asked for a better time, a better fit. Obviously, Dan has compiled an excellent staff, and getting to know the staff and know the coaches, they're great coaches, there's no doubt, but I'd say even better human beings and better people. And it's all about being around the right people. And so that's just been an excellent fit, getting to know them. And it's been a very smooth process up to this point. From a personnel standpoint, we've added obviously Ray Agnew, who I worked with for the whole time I was with the Rams for, over 18 years. And he's just been an amazing, valuable asset. He's been able to, probably to sum it up, he's been able to make it a either accelerated process in terms of laying out what our vision is, and what I have always wanted to be the vision from a personnel standpoint. And he's been excellent in that regards. And it's been in line with what the culture is going to be in terms of what Dan and I vowed to fulfill with Sheila's vision for what the culture is. And so he's been an excellent fit from a culture standpoint. Obviously, with entering free agency preparation and his experience on the pro personnel side of things has been tremendous value for someone as myself. So that's been awesome. We've added John Dorsey. He's been an amazing asset as well. Obviously, for someone like myself as a first-year GM and what John's experience it has been as a GM and his experience in team building and incredible ability to evaluate, he's been tremendous. And all the way from a big picture standpoint and allowing himself to be a resource that I can lean on all the way to the kind of the more minute details of things that that probably I didn't even realize at first. And I would even say what's even been even more cool with John is that he's actually been able to share some experiences of what may have not worked for him. And for him to share those things with me has been awesome, but I can't speak enough about how great of a value and asset that those two men have been on top of what the coaching staff has brought. But it's been awesome working with Dan in this journey, in this process. I was really excited from, when Dan and I first spoke, and it's always exceeded every expectation that I've had going forward. But without anything else being said, I'll hand it over to you guys.
Start us off, Justin.
Good morning, Brad. I know league rules prohibit you from talking about the big transaction of the offseason, so I'll move on to the next one. You've got a franchise tag decision to make here in the next week, and I wonder, one, why those decisions take as long as they do, why there's such a long window, and have you made any progress on what you're going to do with that tag, if you're going to use it at all?
Yeah. Are you speaking on a specific player or just the tag?
Well, I think we all assume that Kenny Galladay is the most logical option, but I guess Romeo fits in that equation potentially as well.
Yeah, well, we want to make the best decision for the Lions, and sometimes those decisions take a little bit longer. And the great thing is that we have a process in place that we believe in, that we've been firm in. And when you really start the planning stages of the process, that process can go all the way up to when you have to make the decision. The great thing, and Dan kind of mentioned earlier, is that we're not going to rush it. So, whether it is the franchise tag on, a Romeo or Kenny or whoever it is, we definitely have a process in place that we believe in, that we're trusting. That's probably the best thing about it, is that we have a process where we're trusting and we're sticking to it. And if it makes sure that it meets the Detroit Lions timeline, and that's really the thing that matters the most.
As you're going through all these various scenarios with both the franchise tag and free agency and the draft and all that, how have you assessed your own cap situation? I know there's still some fluidity there from the league in terms of announcing a final number, but how do you feel about the overall organization's cap situation heading into free agency?
Well, obviously with the there's some uncertainty in terms of what that will be. From our planning standpoint, we've actually been weighing every single scenario, from the most optimistic scenario of what it would be to the worst case scenario. So it goes back to the process and the planning stages in terms of how it works. I will say that Mike Disner has been excellent in terms of his expertise in the salary cap, and working with Dan and myself and working through those areas. He's made the process probably about as seamless as it could have been in terms of his utilization and how he sees it, and it fitting to how we are planning on building the team. So, a lot of credit goes to Mike Disner with the cap situation.
Thank you, Brad.
Tim?
Hey, Brad, thanks for taking the time. Too bad we're not doing this in Indy. But
you got to adjust, Tim. Come on.
Speaking of Indy, I'm just curious. I know free agency comes first, but the free agency and the draft are obviously related. In terms of the draft, where do you see a couple positions that you think are really strong? And maybe on the opposite end, where are a couple spots in the draft that you think are pretty weak and maybe might need free agency to kind of, supplement some of that stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, first of all, I think that this draft class is a good class overall. There are some positions of strength. I've was just looking the other day. I think that the safety class is deep, and there's a lot of value to be found at that position. At really all levels throughout the process. I think that the quarterback class is good this year. I think I like the crop of quarterbacks that are coming out in this year's draft. So that's obviously always a very, very important position. And when you're picking inside the top 10, I don't think that there's a position that you really can look past at any level and say, oh, well, that's not a very, very deep position, or that's not. I mean, when you're picking inside the top 10, you better know every single position, regardless of what your circumstances currently on your roster. So there's really not a position that I can sit here and say that I see as thin right now, just because in relevance of where we're picking at, we have to be prepared to know all positions, and that's part of the process that we're doing now.
Mike? Hey, Brad, a couple questions for you. First, I kind of want to follow a little bit on the cap question and the tag question combined, in that how much might that fluctuation in cap be delaying whatever decision y'all need to make with the tag? Like, say it ends up being the floor versus something maybe 5 or 6 million more. Will that make the decision different whether you use it or not?
That is a good question. That hasn't been a deterrent in terms of us trying to make that decision in terms of the utilization of the tag. Again, like I was saying earlier, it's, we are making plans and using our process in terms of going through every single scenario, from what would be, like you said, the floor to what the highest probably could be. But so just make sure that we're prepared for anything that might come about. But it hasn't really affected in terms of what our utilization will be on it.
And we haven't talked to you since that opening press conference. You said you and Dan were going to look at the roster together. Now, having done that, where do you feel like this roster really is as far as maybe number of guys you think you need to really go and get to be competitive this year or next?
In regards to free agency or the draft?
Combined, just when you look at the roster saying, hey, you're maybe you need X amount of players. You need, when it comes to maybe defense, because y'all said that defensively you felt like you might need some players there. So now that you've looked at the roster, I guess, where do you stand with it?
Yeah, and going through the roster with Dan, and it kind of goes on top of what Dan's been saying, what I've been saying from the get-go, is that I've been very fortunate to be in a position to work with a head coach that sees things eye to eye, and that's been the case from the very get-go, to the point where I think to myself, I'm like, is this how it normally is? But it is. It's truly been like a dream, just in terms of being able to work with a guy like Dan. But going through the roster in general, and us going through it, and us seeing so many things eye to eye in terms of where our starters were, in terms of where we need depth. I would say that there are some pieces that we definitely need to add. We can start with the defensive side of the ball. We definitely need some more depth. We will need starters, at certain places. So, those are things that we're going through. We've identified those spots that we need to add more depth, even if we feel like we need a starter. And it's even when I say like, if we need a starter somewhere, there's still some young guys that still, hadn't played as much that I'm very familiar with coming out of the draft process, and watching the film from the previous year that we feel good about. And so there's optimism in some players that have not been as, let's say, as well known, that we have a lot of hope for. So, but as as what Dan was saying earlier, to add competition, I think that will fuel any spot across at anywhere across the whole defense. And then from an offensive standpoint, it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, do we feel pretty good about where we are from an offensive line standpoint? Yeah, I mean, we're returning starters back that have played at a high level, but we also need depth. We got to deal with the reality that, forbid anything happens, but we got to be prepared that, not even from a development standpoint, but, it's a long season, and you need depth at all areas. And then obviously from a receiver standpoint, there's some decisions that still have to be made, in regards to how we'll approach it with Kenny, and obviously just adding more pieces there and more depth there. I know that you probably look at the roster now and say, well, who are you going to add? It looks thin at that position, but I will say through my experience, even back with the Rams, I want to say it was probably 2017 that our receiver room flipped pretty quickly within a year. That the Rams were able to add some quality pieces, pretty quickly, and to be able to follow a similar kind of blueprint or path, or having the experience of seeing how that works and being involved in that process, is something that I feel confident. Dan and I feel confident about us being able to take on a similar process.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Dave?
Hey, Brad. Hope you're getting settled in, you and the family, to the area. Well,
we're trying, Dave. We're trying.
Got a couple real quick ones I'm going to try to squeeze in. First, just to be direct, can you walk me through the process with Kenny Galladay, the decision you're mulling with the franchise tag? I know you said obviously you're going to do what's best for the organization, and that's a process. But just what are the positives and negatives, I guess, of franchising him?
Yeah, it's a good question. So obviously, I don't think there's any debate that Kenny has shown the ability to be a number one receiver in this league, and with that skill set that everybody knows that he has, that we all know that he has, and being that where we're at from a roster standpoint, there's also been no debate that Kenny has been, at the forefront of our mind in terms of making sure that we make the best possible decision for not only the Lions but for Kenny. So, I wish I had a more direct answer to you to tell you exactly what we're gonna do, but out of respect for the process, I'll keep that in house.
Are you actively trying to sign him to a long-term deal right now?
That's another decision that we're keeping in house, just out of respect for the process. But I'm sure that you'll hear about what we'll be doing shortly.
Okay. And then, I asked this, I guess, in the most general sense, because I know you can't talk about, what's coming down the road. But when you have a veteran quarterback in place, someone who's, I guess, had some success in the league, how does that shape your offseason approach when it comes to roster building or priorities? Just because I assume it's different than if you're starting completely over at the most important position on the field.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, to have a veteran QB that's, won a lot of games, and I don't want to say any specific names, I'm assuming we all know what we're talking about, but obviously in that player's not on our roster right now, but obviously I have a lot of knowledge. I know Jared very, very well, but having a veteran quarterback, obviously, it can shape some decisions in terms of my familiarity with him, knowing kind of what works best for him, what kind of the likes, what he kind of strives for. It does help shape things from a team building standpoint in terms of adding tools, adding pieces that will fit his skill set.
And then very last one, if I can, just because you've been so heavily involved in the college side the last few years, and you sort of alluded to this earlier, the help that Ray and John have given you. But can you just walk us through what types of pro experience you had with the Rams and how different or challenging, whatever it may be, that you've found the pro side to be here as you get ready for free agency, the different nuances, I guess, that you may have to account for that you didn't realize before.
Yeah, so obviously in the when I was with the Rams, I was involved with free agency meetings. I was involved with discussions in terms of we made a good amount of trades that I was able to be involved in those discussions, and even during the season, like weekly advance meetings, was good experience to have from a pro standpoint. So the cool thing about it is at the end of the day, you're trying to add football players, and you're trying to add good football players and good football players that fit what we're trying to do and the best football players for the Lions. And whether it's pro or college, if that's the goal in mind, then that's actually been a relatively seamless process for me. It was funny, Ray was joking with me the other day in terms of the amount of detail that we put into the free agency process. And he even has alluded to that's been a little bit different, but that's the only way that I know in terms of how to go about player acquisition, is to not leave any stone unturned. So whether it's been with, how it's going to work with the salary cap and cash spending, that's all been actually a fun part of it in terms of, the player acquisition process and the evaluation process and seeing what players really, really fit and then what players fit within the salary cap structure has been a fun part of the free agency process.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
All right, out of respect for time, we got time for 4 more, 1 question each, starting with Ken Brown.
Morning, Brad. How are you?
Morning. How you doing?
All right. Since it's Combine Week, I'm gonna get a little geeky with you. I read an article about that the 40-yard dash soon may be obsolete and GPS will be taken over, and the Rams were one of the first teams to do it. Since you were there with this new age analytics, you plan on practicing that with the Lions if that story is true, and how does that exactly work?
Well, that's a good question. I do think that there's one thing about the 40-yard dash time versus what we like to evaluate in terms of play speed. And then I think that when you talk about GPS timing, can that replicate actual play speed in terms of some guy that playing football? So when you look at the 40-yard dash time, you really have to equate it to, like we always say, like, is it reliable? Is it relatable? And does it transfer to actually playing football? So running in a straight line without anybody around you and preparing to run in a straight line in spandex and a t-shirt, how much is that relatable to football? So I'm not sure about actually removing the 40-yard dash time, because I do think that I truly believe that it can confirm things that you may think in terms from a play speed standpoint. So if you think that a player is fast on film, and then if he runs a fast 40, then, obviously you can lay on that and say, okay, all right, that actually lines up to what I was thinking. But, when it's the opposite, when you don't think that a player is that fast on film, and then you see him running a fast 40-yard dash time, you shouldn't ignore that. You actually should use that to go back and look at and be sure, like, well, I wasn't really expecting that, but let's just be sure. And from an analytical standpoint, that's how I've always viewed the analytic game, period, is that I think always the analytics can really be a piece of to hold you accountable. So if the data is telling you something that your eyes aren't seeing, you shouldn't be stubborn and say, let's ignore that because my eyes are correct. let's actually look and see why the data is actually saying that versus what your eyes are seeing. And so I think the more that you dive into that, I think you'll actually come up with the answer in terms of exactly what you're asking for about speed, whether it be 40-yard dashes or GPS timing. But at the end of the day, we're looking at play speed and relatability to how fast a guy's playing football.
Chris?
Morning, Brad. I kind of just wanted to follow up a little bit on the salary cap stuff you were talking about. Do you have any sense of how, I guess, it'll be approached from the other side by players and agents? If more guys will be willing to take maybe short-term deals this year and try to get to the market when there's more money? Is it too early to guess at how they might handle that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And that's something that, it's funny, even in coming up on the college side, it always talk about we have to predict the future and try to find out, what's going to happen. We'd love to have a crystal ball. Well, it's been the same thing from a free agency standpoint in regards with the salary cap, because you would think, that you're going through this process. You're saying, well, maybe at this stage in his career, maybe he's only looking for a 1-year prove it kind of deal, or maybe not. And so you just kind of weigh all those different scenarios, and you're trying to come up with what is, what makes the most sense. And obviously we're trying to look for what makes the most sense from a team standpoint, for what makes the best sense for the lines. But at the same time, you're trying to predict where that player's at and what that player's what the player is and what his agent is really thinking of, because he gets a lot of guidance from that standpoint. So, when you really delve into those discussions, you have some surprises that, it might be the opposite of what we were thinking. But that is a good question, and it's an ongoing thing, is that I think at this stage that, that some players will look for shorter deals because maybe that will set them up for something a little further down the line. But we've had a lot of surprises already to this point, so I would expect even more surprises there.
Kyle?
Morning, Brad.
Morning. How you doing?
I want to go back to the draft if I can. You had mentioned that you really like this class of quarterbacks.
Yep.
I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on that, what you like about this group of passers. And then related to that, Mel Kiper said this week that if he was the Lions, he wouldn't draft a quarterback 7th overall if you guys stayed on the pick. Just, I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I think Kiper, he had definitely he's been doing it for a long time, and he has his own opinion in terms of, where we should go. And, I think the quarterback position in general, what's cool about this year is that, they're in all different flavors. You have a guy that actually can do it all, can, do it from the pocket, do it with his legs. You have another guy that's probably a little bit more, does it with his legs, a little bit more being creative. There's another guy that actually probably does it more from the pocket. So all the different flavors makes it very, very intriguing in terms of when you're looking across the whole scope of, the class of these quarterbacks. But I do think, again, when you're picking in the top 10, and I don't think you can ignore, and I think it's just smart drafting business anyways, is that when you're picking in the top 10, that you make sure that that quarterback class very thoroughly. But I do think that to be elaborate, I definitely think that the intriguing part is that they're all different genres and flavors, and it's all about what's been great about for the Lions is that Dan and Coach Lynn, they've been in lockstep in terms of the vision's been clear in terms of when you look at scheme and this and that and all those minute details, it's okay, what do our players do best? And being that, make sure that our players are going to be put in the best position to succeed. And so, you kind of take the same approach with the quarterbacks and see what their superpower is, and is that superpower the best thing that's going to fit for the Lions.
Thanks, Brett.
All right, Mike O'Hara, last question.
Hey, Coach Brad, I missed not seeing you at St. Elmo's last night. I'm sure you feel the same way. Hey, this is just a pretty simple question, but what do the opt-outs play in evaluating players this year? This is really, I guess you could call it a phenomenon in the draft. And is it a red flag, or is it no flag, or is it just part of the drill?
Yeah, you don't want to, I guess you'd say, punish a player for doing an opt-out. At the end of the day, there's some very good football players that have chosen to opt out, that, and it just makes sure that it actually holds you more accountable from an evaluation standpoint and a process standpoint, which is that's what we're doing. But, it hasn't deterred us in any part of the process in terms of, he's going to get punished, or he's going to get pushed down the line because he has been an opt-out. It's no different than, say there's a unique case where a player could not be eligible to play this season. So, but it's just that when you look at it in the opt-out bucket, then it's actually, but it's definitely more unique than what we've experienced. But again, I think it's going to hold you accountable to make sure you have a very, very dialed in process from an evaluation standpoint, which is what we're doing right now.
Okay, great. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.